Archive transmission. Ritual Archive Node 1. The following report documents a structural anomaly discovered inside the Belmont Hotel. The building is listed in municipal records as an 8-story structure constructed in 1974. Emergency stairwells listed in the architectural plans, too. However, multiple witnesses have reported the appearance of an additional vertical access structure, not present in any official blueprint. The structure is referred to internally as Stairwell C. Observation of this structure may trigger continued architectural correction. Unauthorized investigation is discouraged. Daniel Reyes preferred the night shift. The Belmont Hotel was a completely different place after midnight. During the day, the building felt mechanical. Guests moved through the lobby in a constant stream of rolling luggage and tired conversations. Phones rang at the front desk. Housekeeping carts rattled down the corridors. But once the clock passed midnight, everything slowed. The elevators traveled less often. The lights in the hallways seemed dimmer. Even the air in the building felt older. Daniel had worked maintenance at the Belmont for 6 years. Long enough to know every mechanical room, every breaker panel, every air duct and plumbing line hidden behind the walls. Older buildings always developed small habits. Pipes clicked at certain hours. Air vents hummed in particular patterns. Some doors stuck during humid weather. Daniel knew those details the way a mechanic knew the sound of an engine. So when the front desk radio crackled at 2:14 in the morning, he immediately sensed something was wrong. "Maintenance," the desk clerk said. "Guest in room 612 is reporting noise." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "What kind of noise?" "Footsteps." "That's normal." The clerk hesitated. "He says they're coming from a staircase." Daniel looked at the building map pinned to the maintenance office wall. Room 612 sat in the middle of the 6th-floor hallway. Nowhere near a stairwell. The Belmont only had 2 staircases. One beside the elevator bank. One at the far end of the corridor. Room 612 was exactly between them. Still, guest complaints had to be checked. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and rode the elevator to the 6th floor. The doors opened quietly. The hallway stretched ahead under soft yellow lights. Rows of identical doors lined the carpeted corridor. Room numbers moved past in familiar order. Room 601. Room 603. Room 605. Room 607. Daniel walked slowly toward room 612. The hallway was completely silent. He knocked. A moment later, the door opened. The man inside looked like he had not slept in hours. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. His hair was flattened against one side of his head. "You hear it?" the man asked immediately. Daniel tilted his head. "Hear what?" "The stairs." The guest pointed toward the wall. "Someone keeps walking up and down them." Daniel looked at the wall beside the door. There was nothing there. Just wallpaper and the faint outline of concrete support beams behind it. "Sir," Daniel said carefully, "there isn't a staircase here." The man shook his head. "Just listen." They stood there quietly. For several seconds, Daniel heard nothing. Then, a sound. Faint. Metallic. Footsteps climbing stairs. Slow. Steady. One step. Then another. Daniel felt the muscles in his neck tighten. The sound was unmistakable. Someone was climbing a metal staircase. But the noise was coming from inside the wall. "That's impossible," Daniel said quietly. The guest nodded. "I know." Daniel stepped away from the door and walked down the hallway. The footsteps continued. Slow. Steady. Climbing upward somewhere inside the building's structure. As he approached the elevator lobby, the sound grew clearer. Someone was definitely climbing stairs. Daniel turned the corner and stopped. A door stood beside the elevators. A narrow gray metal door he had never seen before. A red sign hung above it. Stairwell C. Daniel stared at it. The Belmont Hotel had 2 staircases. He had seen the blueprints dozens of times. Yet this door looked old. The paint was worn along the edges. The handle looked polished by years of use, as if thousands of hands had opened it before. Daniel stepped closer. He pulled the master maintenance key from his ring and slid it into the lock. The door opened with a long metallic creak. Inside was a concrete stairwell. Dim fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The steps spiraled upward into shadow. Daniel looked back at the hallway. Then he stepped inside. The door closed behind him. The air inside the stairwell smelled like dust and old cement. Daniel began climbing. One flight, then another. Numbers painted beside the stairwell doors marked each floor. 6, 7, 8. He reached the 8th floor landing. The Belmont only had 8 floors. Daniel pushed open the door. The hallway looked normal. Carpet, doors, quiet lighting. Nothing unusual. He stepped back into the stairwell. Then he looked up. The staircase continued. Another flight of steps, rising above the 8th floor. There should not have been anything above that level. But the stairs were clearly there. Waiting. Daniel swallowed and started climbing again. Daniel did not sleep that night. He stayed inside the maintenance office, watching the security monitors. The Belmont Hotel had 23 cameras. Lobby, elevators, hallways, parking garage. Daniel had checked them thousands of times over the years. Tonight something was different. The building looked larger. The camera covering the 6th floor hallway now showed 19 doors instead of 14. Room numbers extended farther down the corridor. 615, 616, 617, 618, 619. Daniel watched as a guest stepped out of room 618. A man wearing a bathrobe walked down the hallway carrying a phone. He looked completely normal, completely unaware that his room had not existed yesterday. Daniel switched the camera feed. 8th floor. The corridor extended farther than before. Room numbers now ran past 814, 815, 816, 817, 818, 819. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The building was expanding across every floor. Quietly, perfectly, without construction, without noise, without warning. He switched the camera to the elevator lobby. The gray door marked Stairwell C stood slightly open. No one had entered it since Daniel had returned from the basement. But the stairwell light inside flickered faintly, and the sound of footsteps still echoed upward. Someone was climbing. Daniel leaned closer to the monitor. The footsteps were steady, unhurried, as if whoever was climbing had all the time in the world. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Step. Daniel suddenly realized something. No one had come down the staircase. The footsteps had only moved upward. For hours. He looked at the building blueprint again. 8 floors. 2 staircases. Yet the footsteps continued climbing past floors that should not exist. Daniel grabbed the radio and left the maintenance office. He needed to see the staircase again. The elevator carried him to the 8th floor. When the doors opened, he immediately noticed the difference. The hallway was longer, much longer. Where the corridor had once ended at room 814, it now continued another 20 meters. New doors lined the walls. Room 815, 816, 817, 818, 819, 820, 821, 822. Daniel stood motionless. The Belmont Hotel had never had rooms above 814. Yet the carpet looked worn. The door frames carried small scratches from years of luggage brushing against them. The building had not simply created these rooms. It had created their history. Daniel turned toward the elevator lobby. The gray door stood there waiting. Stairwell C. The metal handle gleamed under the ceiling light. Daniel opened the door again. The stairwell rose upward into shadow. He began climbing. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Each landing had a door. Each door carried a number painted on the concrete wall. The numbers continued higher than the Belmont Hotel should have allowed. Daniel reached floor 12 and stopped. The door opened into another hotel corridor, identical to every other floor. Guests walked down the hallway. A man rolled a suitcase toward the elevator. A couple laughed quietly near the vending machine. They all behaved as if the 12th floor had always existed. Daniel stepped back into the stairwell. He looked upward again. The staircase still continued. Another flight. Then another. Daniel climbed again. 13. 14. 15. His breathing grew heavier. The building had become impossible. Yet everything inside it behaved normally. When he reached the 15th landing, he found something new. The door was different. Instead of a hotel hallway, the door opened into a narrow concrete room. Inside the room stood a single metal cabinet. The cabinet door hung slightly open. Daniel stepped inside slowly. A single folder sat on the shelf. The cover carried the same government seal he had seen in the basement archive. Office of Urban Corrections. Daniel opened the folder. Inside was a typed report. Continuity Observer Assignment. Project, Belmont Hotel's Structural Correction. Required component, Stairwell C. Correction trigger, Architectural Awareness. Observer identified, Daniel Reyes. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. His name appeared clearly on the page. The document continued. Observer responsibilities. Maintain structural awareness. Confirm integration of missing components. Ensure continuity of correction. Daniel turned the page. A diagram of the hotel appeared. The Belmont was no longer 8 floors tall. The drawing showed 12, then 13, then 15. Each level marked a CORRECTD. Another line appeared beneath the diagram. Correction will continue until structural requirements are satisfied. Daniel whispered quietly, "How many floors does it need?" Behind him, the stairwell echoed again. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. The footsteps had reached the 15th floor. Daniel turned slowly. The stairwell door creaked open. No one stood there. Yet the footsteps continued. Climbing. Upward. Toward the next flight. Daniel stepped into the stairwell again. He looked up. The staircase continued rising. 16. 17. 18. The numbers kept going. He suddenly understood the truth. The building had not finished correcting itself. The Belmont Hotel had always required 3 staircases. But its design also required more floors, more space, more structure. And the city had approved the plans. Decades ago, Daniel looked back at the folder in his hands. At the bottom of the final page, another line had appeared. Project status. Approved. Correction in progress. Observer active. Daniel walked slowly back down the stairs. 15. 14. 13. 12. 11. 10. 9. 8. When he returned to the 8th floor, the hallway had changed again. Room numbers now reached 826. Guests walked calmly through the corridor. No one seemed confused. No one questioned the extra rooms. The Belmont Hotel had simply expanded around them. Daniel returned to the maintenance office. He sat in front of the security monitors again. The building continued growing. New hallways appeared. New rooms filled with guests. The elevator display now showed 12 floors instead of 8. Daniel leaned back in the chair. The file in his hand felt heavier now. The word observer repeated in his mind. He had not caused the correction. He had only noticed it. And that had been enough. Outside the maintenance office, Somewhere inside the walls of the Belmont Hotel, the third staircase continued rising. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. The sound moved higher and higher through floors that had not existed yesterday. Daniel looked at the camera, showing the stairwell door. The gray metal door slowly swung open again. Beyond it, the staircase stretched upward forever. The Belmont Hotel was still correcting itself. And Daniel now understood something the document had not explained. Once an observer was assigned, they could not leave, because someone had to remain inside the structure. Someone who remembered what the building used to be. Someone who could confirm each correction. The monitors flickered. The elevator display changed again. 14 floors. Then 15. Then 16. Daniel looked at the blueprint on the desk. The drawing was changing. Lines extended upward. New levels appearing one by one. The final page of the file updated again. Project status. Approved. Correction continues. Observer required. Daniel closed the folder slowly. Somewhere above him, the footsteps were still climbing. And the Belmont Hotel was not finished yet. Archive note, Mr. Ritual. If you ever stay in an old hotel and notice a stairwell you do not remember seeing earlier, do not open the door. Some buildings correct themselves when someone notices the mistake. And once the correction begins, the structure may require an observer, someone who stays behind, someone who confirms that the building has finally become what it was always supposed to be.